Breaking! The political timeline of Keir Starmer has not just paused, it has been violently severed. What is unfolding in London tonight is not a government reshuffle or a policy pivot, but the systematic, brutal, and total dismantling of a prime minister by the only force in the nation that he cannot spin, cannot bully, and cannot fire. King Charles has made his move. It was silent, it was surgical, and it was absolutely lethal. The Prime Minister is currently trapped inside number 10, surrounded by aides who are weeping in corridors, legal teams who are shredding documents, and a silence from the palace that is louder than any scream. This is the end of the illusion. For 2 years, Starmer walked the halls of Westminster believing he was the master of the realm, the man who tamed the system. Tonight, he is staring into the abyss of a constitutional reality he never bothered to understand. The crown does not fight politicians. The crown simply removes the ground they stand on. And the ground is gone.
The catastrophic sequence began at exactly 6 a.m. this morning, a time when most of the capital was still sleeping, but the death warrant for the government was already being delivered. There were no sirens, no flashing lights. Just a single, unmarked courier arriving at the back gates of Downing Street, delivering a handwritten note on royal stationery that was so devastating, the duty clerk reportedly shook while reading it. The weekly audience, the bedrock of British governance, the sacred hour where the Prime Minister briefs the King, was effectively terminated. Not rescheduled, not delayed, terminated until further notice. In the diplomatic language of the monarchy, this is the equivalent of a nuclear strike. It signals to the judiciary, the military, and the civil service that the king no longer views the current administration as a functioning partner in the governance of the United Kingdom.
The panic that followed inside Downing Street was visceral. Sources describe a scene of absolute pandemonium. Senior ministers, men and women who pride themselves on their composure, were screaming into telephones, desperate to reach anyone at the palace who would pick up. Nobody picked up. The lines were dead. The cold shoulder from the king has frozen the entire machinery of the state. Starmer, a man who built his entire career on the image of forensic competence, has been reduced to a ghost in his own house, pacing the floorboards, asking the same desperate question over and over again. What does he have on us? He knows the king wouldn't strike this hard unless the ammunition was terminal. And he is right. The palace isn't playing a game of chess. They are playing a game of survival, and they just checkmated the Prime Minister before he even realized the board had been set.
To understand why this is happening and why it is happening now, you have to look past the headlines and into the shadows of the last 72 hours. The media will tell you this is about a specific policy or a clash of personalities. They are lying, or they are blind. This is about betrayal. It has emerged through leaks that are far too specific to be accidental, that Starmer's inner circle made a fatal miscalculation. They believed King Charles was an old man in a gilded cage, distracted by his health and bound by tradition. They thought they could bypass the royal assent on a series of controversial constitutional reforms by using administrative loopholes, effectively trying to rewrite the rules of the British state without the monarch's oversight. They didn't just ignore the crown, they tried to erase it.
It was an act of breathtaking arrogance. Starmer's team, filled with young, aggressive technocrats who view history as an inconvenience, drafted secret memos outlining a plan to neutralize the palace's influence. They mocked the king in private encrypted chats. They laughed about modernizing the monarchy into oblivion. They planned to present the king with a fait accompli, forcing him to sign away his remaining prerogatives or face a manufactured public outcry. But they forgot one crucial thing. The walls have ears. The monarchy has survived 1,000 years, not by being loud, but by being observant. Every memo, every email, every whispered conversation in the tea rooms of Westminster eventually finds its way back to the king's private secretary. Charles wasn't ignoring them. He was watching them. He was documenting every insult, every bypassed procedure, every constitutional violation. He was building a file. And yesterday, he opened it.
The trap was sprung with a leak that changed British history in an instant. A series of documents, clearly authorized for release by the highest levels of the royal household, found their way to the editors of the major broadsheets. These weren't gossip columns. They were forensic evidence of a government conspiring against its own constitution. The paper showed Starmer's chief of staff explicitly inquiring about the legal mechanisms to override the monarch. They showed the Attorney General warning that their plans were illegal, only to be overruled by political operatives. The public saw in black and white a prime minister who acts like a dictator, who believes that rules are for little people, not for him. The narrative of Starmer the sensible lawyer evaporated instantly. In its place stood Starmer the constitutional vandal.
The reaction from the British public has been nothing short of a tidal wave. You can feel the shift in the air, a sudden, angry clarity sweeping across the nation. For years, people have been told that the monarchy is irrelevant, a waste of money. But faced with a politician grasping for unchecked power, the people have instinctively rallied behind the king. They see Charles not as a ruler, but as a protector, the final line of defense against the political class that has lost its moral compass. The polls released this afternoon are apocalyptic for Labour. It's not a slide, it's a free fall. The Prime Minister's approval rating has collapsed into single digits in key constituencies. Traditional Labour voters, the people who value decency and fair play, are burning their membership cards. They are disgusted. They see a government that lied to them about its intentions, that tried to steal power in the dark.
Inside the House of Commons, the atmosphere is toxic. The Labour Party is fracturing in real time. The discipline that Starmer was so proud of has disintegrated. MPs who were loyal yesterday are now briefing against him today, desperate to distance themselves from the blast zone. They know an election is coming, sooner than anyone expected, and they know that running under the banner of Keir Starmer is now a political death sentence. The whispers in the corridors are brutal. "He's finished," one senior backbencher was overheard saying. "The king has killed him." Even the cabinet, usually a phalanx of support, has gone silent. No ministers are on the morning shows. No surrogates are defending the prime minister on Twitter. They have left him to die alone. It is the loneliest position in the world, standing at the dispatch box of history while your own army retreats.
And here is what makes it worse. The king hasn't even played his ace card yet. The silence from the palace is deliberate. It is a vacuum that sucks the oxygen out of Starmer's defense. Every hour that Charles refuses to speak is another hour where the prime minister looks weak, guilty, and small. The opposition is having a field day, of course. They aren't attacking, they are simply asking questions. Why won't the king meet the prime minister? What does the palace know that we don't? Is the prime minister a security risk? These questions are unanswerable because the truth is too damaging to admit. Starmer cannot say, "The king won't meet me because I tried to stab him in the back." So he stammers, he evades, he looks at his shoes, and the country watches him shrink. But the political death of Keir Starmer is only the surface of this crisis. If you dig deeper, if you listen to the quiet conversations happening between high-level barristers and constitutional experts, a darker reality emerges. We are moving beyond politics into the realm of criminal liability. The documents released so far are bad, yes, but sources close to the investigation suggest they are merely the tip of the iceberg. There is talk of a second tranche of evidence, material so sensitive that it is currently being held in a secure vault at Windsor Castle, known only to the king and 3 of his most trusted advisors. This isn't about arrogance anymore. This is about corruption.
The rumors swirling through the city of London suggest that the constitutional reforms Starmer's team was pushing weren't just ideological, they were transactional. There are allegations, unproven but persistent, that access to the legislative drafting process was sold to external interests. That promises were made to donors that the regulatory powers of the crown would be stripped away to clear the path for massive, unchecked corporate expansion. If this is true, if the government tried to sell the British Constitution for 30 pieces of silver, then we are not looking at a resignation. We are looking at prison sentences. We are looking at the total delegitimization of the entire government. This is why the panic in Downing Street is so absolute. They aren't just afraid of losing their jobs, they are afraid of losing their liberty. The frantic shredding of documents, the wiping of hard drives, the sudden resignation of junior aides, these are not the actions of innocent people. These are the actions of a crew realizing the ship is sinking and they have nowhere to swim. They know that the king knows, and they know that unlike a parliamentary committee or a media inquiry, the king cannot be bribed, threatened, or stalled. He is the font of justice in the United Kingdom. If he decides to hand that evidence to the police, the game is over.
The tension is unbearable. The entire country is waiting for the next shoe to drop. Will the king release the second set of documents? Will he dissolve Parliament? Will he address the nation? The uncertainty is a weapon, and Charles is wielding it with devastating precision. He is letting the Prime Minister stew in his own fear, letting the imagination of the public fill in the blanks. And the public imagination is turning against the government with ferocious speed. Every silence from the palace is interpreted as a judgment. Every non-answer from Downing Street is interpreted as a confession. We are witnessing the final days of Rome, played out in the grey drizzle of London. The Prime Minister is a walking corpse. He may technically hold the office, but he holds no power. The civil service is ignoring his orders, waiting for the new regime. The police are watching the exits. The world is watching a lesson in ancient power dynamics. The man who shouts the loudest does not run the country. The man who wears the crown does. Keir Starmer wanted a fight. He wanted to be the man who broke the monarchy. Instead, he has become the man who broke himself against it.
As night falls over Westminster, the lights are burning late in number 10. But there is no hope in that building, only fear. The king is at Windsor, reportedly calm, reportedly tending to his gardens, utterly unbothered by the chaos he has unleashed. He has reminded the world that the Prime Minister is an employee and the king is the owner. The eviction notice has been served. The locks are being changed. And the question that haunts every single person in the government tonight is not how do we fix this, it is who goes down first. The betrayal of the British people has been exposed. The system is correcting itself in the most violent way possible. And when the dust settles, when the history books are written, this week will be remembered as the moment the crown stopped being ceremonial and started being the executioner. The king moves in silence, but the crash that follows will be heard around the world.